Mm, I think we're ready to admit people.
Yeah, but so long as we don't admit the note takers, that's all. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello, Joe. Hello, Jelena. It's all the J's today.
Hi, Asher.
Hi, Joe. So John, you're doing the admitting, is that right?
Yeah, we have a couple of co-hosts, so we can all. I will be looking into it as well.
Okay. Okay. So so let me see who's in there. I think there's a couple more in there, right?
Yeah, don't worry. I'll be on the lookout, admitting
Okay.
as we speak now,
All right.
and then we'll remove all the note takers. So that we're done.
Good. Welcome, everyone. Oh, we went from the J's to the M's, so very nice. some kind of system happening here. Welcome, everyone. We're just waiting while we admit people in the waiting room. So very pleased to have you here for you to take up your afternoon. I'm not sure where in the world you're joining from. Is it morning, afternoon, evening? Just let us know in the chat where you're joining us from. And once we've let everyone in, we can start. So let me know, John, when you've let everyone in. Your greetings from India. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mohammed, for joining from India. And Ardara, there's two from Aotearoa. And we've got a few. And yeah, welcome, Shaher. Thank you. And Singapore, wonderful, Kutika. Lovely to have you here from Singapore. Very much regional. This is going to be very topical for the whole region. So thank you so much for joining us. So let me start with the usual way of the way we start meetings in Australia. So I acknowledge the Darug people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land from which I am joining you today. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to elders of traditional custodians of all the lands that you are joining from as well. They have deep knowledge to share with us and very beneficial to our work as social innovators. So thank you so much. And I'll pass you on to Steve.
You're muted.
Hi, everyone. We've got three fantastic guests doing a range of different things today. Ali, Silla, and Stanley with us, and excited to hear a little bit about what they're each doing. So we'll jump in. Asher will give a brief intro we'll explore what Ali's doing first off. Asher will give an intro, and I'll jump in with some questions. We'll go through each speaker, and then at the end we can all add our questions for the speakers, and we'll allow about 10 minutes at the end for that. So we'll keep questions brief and concise, and really looking forward to that. So Asher, if you could introduce Ali, please.
Thank you so much, Steve. So Ali bin Shahid is an engineer, designer, and systems architect focused on water cycle repair and climate. He maps trigger points across the land to sky chain and works with teams to pair field interventions with digital twins and physics-aware models. He co-founded PSKL Water for All and documents methods at Regenesis. Welcome, Ali. I know we're all eager to hear about your work. Over to you, Steve.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
I know Ali well. I'm co-founder with him in PSKL, and we have another co-founder. So a big fan of Ali and his work.
Thank you, Steve.
Ali identifies himself by an interesting title, something that I've only heard in recent times, and that's a climate architect. So I'm really keen for you, Ali, to unpack what is a climate architect and what excites you about that focus.
Thank you, Steve, and hi, everyone. That's a pretty interesting question. So I'll start off with the basically climate architecture is like living systems architecture. So think of it like this. We say that the climate change is because of human interventions. Humans wreck the natural systems, and now we are in a state in which we are in a state of chaos, and it's basically broken cycles. So by identifying myself as a climate architect, I work backwards from those points. So we have already messed up, but we can actually bring those things back. And by understanding nature and how human systems interact with them, we can solve things one by one. So it essentially it covers ecosystems, water cycles, carbon cycles, ocean atmospheric systems, and energy and carbon and water cycles together. So it's just sort of like a systems thinking across all of those disciplines. And then looking at nature, which is the best sort of like system it developed over centuries. It's in if you ask me, it's I would not say it's evolution. I'll probably go with the creation. So it's the handiwork of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of God, who created these best perfect systems. And now we look at them and we can mimic them and we can solve the crisis that we are in by healing those broken cycles.
And what, Ali, in your experience and expertise, so how did you develop this focus? Was it your previous experience that sort of
Yeah, that's so. I started off as a systems engineer, basically grounded in mechatronics engineering, and my job was basically mathematical modeling and control systems. So I would look at the flow variables and the through variables, the through variables and the cross variables, which basically is the variables that flow and the variables that are at the in economics you would call them stocks and flows. So then based on those variables, we would look at a system and we would identify, okay, how much is the time that it takes to give for the system to give a certain response, and that's known as this transfer function. So by looking at those transfer functions, we would analyze and we would, if we need, for instance, you are in a car and you don't have a shock sorry. So for instance, if you're driving a car and you don't have a shock absorber and you hit a bump and immediately you feel the shock. So what do? You put a damper in it, and by putting a damper, you spread that shock across time. And so that was what I was doing initially. And in 2012, I left that and I started farming, and I literally knew nothing about farming except my mathematical background and just seeing people do it. And the first thing that we did was we were trying to put up tunnel farming, and it was like kind of like, it's scary actually. The tunnel farming that we do is scary because there's so many chemicals and sprays put on a 3-month crop that, yeah, it's horrible actually. So I started looking at indigenous systems and how would people in the past used to do it. And that's how I accidentally met Larry Kahn, who was a student of Manasoba Fukuoka, the author of One Straw Revolution. And I studied permaculture under him. And then I started asking questions basically which permaculture was not really asking like how much of this thing would impact this thing. And my engineering background sort of like came into that aspect. And that's how I started looking at different systems and then towards climate and how we can balance the climate. So sort of like that.
Yeah, I think that's a niche that you really have, that you love to quantify things as a engineer. And that's can be difficult to do with a living system, with everything dynamic and interacting all the time. But you can certainly work on a certain aspect and conservatively say, because I'm focusing on this aspect and I can quantify that, we know that it's moving in a better direction overall. Therefore, this is a conservative estimate. I find that really interesting. What key aspects, what key understandings would you like people to have about a system's understanding of climate and how we impact it for better or worse?
Okay, so I'll try to tackle this in 2 ways. So there are certain processes in nature. If you basically, climate is nature doing its handiwork. It's small cycles and long cycles. There are short cycles and there are long cycles. So basically, if you look at water cycle, there's a long water cycle in which the vapor would evaporate from the oceans. It will go up into the atmosphere. The winds will take it to some orographic intervention, some mountain range. It will strike it, and then it will rain. This is basically generally the large water cycle. But once it passes over land, you can have, if it's passing over a desert, the air will become drier and it will go slightly higher because of the temperature. And now the cycle is becoming longer till it reaches that place where there are mountains. But if you have forests, they add more moisture to it, and the water can actually be recycled as it passes through it's passed towards whatever it's going to through in the circulation. And if we have multiple loops at different places, we can actually keep on taking water and adding water, keep on taking what the nature is giving us in terms of rain, and then recycle it back. And it's got sort of like balances the balances the impact or the amount of water that's in that system. So if you ask me what excites me, what excites me is basically the nature's ability to balance and sort of like spread the impact of a spike, for instance, a flood spike or a drought spike over time, and then you can have the same amount of rain spread over time. Think of it like you are living in a house in which you have a water supply coming in, and the water supply comes only 1 hour per day. And if you have no tanks in the system, all of that water will be available only for that 1 hour. But if you have a tank in the system, a water tank, you can have that supply 24 hours. That's kind of like similar to what we can do with the flood. So if the flood is coming, we can dampen its effect through multiple system elements. Like you can have mangroves on the coastline. Then as you go inland, you can have coastal forests, then the rainforest. And as you move along, each of the system keeps on recycling that amount of water. So that's the first thing that excites me, the ability of nature to close the loops fast. And the second thing is there are certain places in the climate, in the topography, in the land, which can have the most impact in terms of regeneration. So there was a study we were doing. I did a study with Peter Bunyard in Amazon rainforest, and we were looking at the biotic pump, which was passing over the coastal winds, which were passing over Amazon, and they entered through the Balem and Sao Luis corridor, and they pass over the Para province, and then eventually they enter the Amazon. And we found out that the choke point of that region is the Para-Maranhão corridor, that small strip of land which was fairly deforested. So rather than working on the entire Amazon and bringing back the deforestation rates down in the entire Amazon, we could just focus on this particular choke point and increase the rainfall inland in the Amazon region, which also allows us to repair it faster, to regenerate faster, but also gives us the response in the fastest time. So this is what I was mentioning in terms of certain points in the landscape, which are sort of like a trigger or nodal points, which can cascade effects down the line.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ali. I'd love to get into deeper discussions. Unfortunately, we'll have to jump to some other speakers. Where can people learn more about your work?
So I have a Substack, which is known as Regenesis. Maybe you can just share the link.
Yep.
And my posts are basically free for first 7 days, and then they sort of like go into paywall. So if I post, you can just immediately see them. But after a while, they will go into paid mode. Anyway, thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much, Steve, for having me.
Thank you. I'll put that in the chat shortly. Asha, could you please introduce Stanley?
I will. Thank you so much, Ali. And I hope you can hear me because my internet's a bit unstable. So Stanley Wappert from New Ireland province in Papua New Guinea has a background in environmental science and climate change science and policy in the context of sustainable development in the PNG, in the Pacific and the Pacific. Since founding Infinity Blue PNG, Stanley has been putting his expertise into practice with his significant mangrove and seagrass project in New Ireland. And Ali has already referred to how mangroves can make a difference. So welcome, Stanley, and we're all looking forward to hearing about your amazing story and how all this is pairs up with what Ali was saying. Over to you.
Thank you,
Asha.
Asha.
Thanks, Stanley, for joining us. Stanley is doing some exciting work in New Ireland in PNG, and has a company, and we've had some chats with him and been super impressed what he's doing. He has a company, Infinity Blue PNG. Could you describe a bit about your company?
Thank you, Steve, and thank you everyone for coming. Yeah, so we had a dream to build an organization on the ground that is community-led, and to explore payment for ecosystem services in addition to environmental conservation. So we set up Infinity Blue as a vehicle for us to explore payment for ecosystem services, carbon and biodiversity crediting as an incentive to conservation work. I've been working in that space for a long time, and we've had all these challenges with our communities in PNG. So we decided to come up with this idea. Thank you.
Great. You said you got a bit of experience in this conservation and carbon projects area. What excites you about the possibilities for the communities you're working with combined with carbon projects? What would that enable for communities for beneficial carbon outcomes and beneficial community outcomes? You know, what possibilities do you see there?
Yeah, I think for a project, I think one of the biggest strengths that we have is the partnerships we have. So we've been able to have partnerships with Griffith University in Australia, Gold Coast and Brisbane. The Griffith team helping us to put the proposal together with our local knowledge, and also the University of New South Wales. When we got the opportunity, we were privileged to get this opportunity from an open call for proposals to catalyze blue carbon projects in the Asia Pacific region, and we saw that opportunity to build on our efforts, our local efforts on conservation, apart from other activities like the livelihood in our communities. And it's a target area on the northern side of New Ireland. So we were fortunate to, in partnership with Griffith, to put in a joint proposal, and we were granted the research grants to do research on ecosystems assessment and valuation that is a an important criteria for carbon crediting and even biodiversity crediting. And I think the people are excited about those, that other additional opportunity out there that is emerging from climate finance.
Great. Yeah, it's really pioneering. Could you share with us what your greatest challenge in Infinity Blue PNG in relation to, I don't think there's many other carbon projects happening in New Guinea like yours. And so the greatest challenge and your greatest success.
So
What's your
first
greatest
one
challenge?
is research. There's a lot of details in these the standards for carbon projects. I've been fortunate to follow what's been going on in the compliance in the UNFCCC, and now coming out as private with the team. We're also exploring what's happening in the voluntary space, and there's a lot of technical details and research about. You need to understand, like for example, in the mangroves, the research on carbon stocks and flows, and whether you're able to get enough field data. I think that's, and it costs money to go to areas in the project sites to get data. But thanks to our partners, Griffith, and now because of our project, we're able to leverage additional support from other projects. There's another one coming on UNDP on, they call it a Blue-Green Island project. It's a global one, but some of the components are on this new concept. There's a new tool on natural capital accounting, which really is one of a technical requirement for carbon and biodiversity projects. So we're excited that that has come on, but it was a challenge for us this time. And yeah, Steve, you asked about opportunities. Yes, yeah, we're having because of the earlier work that we have done through the Australian government support. It has set a platform for us to leverage other support to continue to build the work that we are doing.
Definitely. And with this initial experience, presumably you'll have a blueprint that you'll be able to, all your learnings and experience, transfer to similar contexts in PNG?
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. We just had a workshop with the government agencies that are responsible for the environment, the Conservation and Environment Protection Authority, the Marine Conservation. They have the marine protected areas, and also the Climate Change Office and the PNG Forest, who are working in the, forest. They say, the mangroves are still forest. I'm not sure about the definitions, but the key government agencies who want to have a say in carbon projects were there to see our thinking on what should be the key criteria for developing these kinds of projects. Like you should have technical assessments, the ecosystems assessments, having a management plan for the clan groups at community level to manage their resources, like no cutting of the mangroves for firewood and for housing, for timber, and looking for other alternatives. So it's really a conservation project and for avoided deforestation in those areas, so roughly around 30,000 hectares of mangroves, right? 15 species, pretty much pristine. And our idea is to put in a management plan and a proposal to the standards, like for example, Vera, that we want to protect the carbon stocks and as one asset, but there's other provisioning services that those habitats provide, like the fisheries and for our communities. Yeah, so we're working around that idea, and hopefully we'll be able to put something that will attract investment.
Right. And just briefly, my understanding is that mangroves sequester carbon much quicker than other forests. Is that a consideration for climate financing and those sorts of aspects?
Yeah, I think they sequester more than the forest, but the most important feature of the mangroves is they store it. They store so much of the carbon if you compare it to the dryland forest, because all the dead organic matter and all the debris are stored in the soil. So it's held there, and there's a lot of storage also in the root system of the mangroves, and we are arguing that these stocks, if they are not managed because of the threats that surround them, there's all these threats about exploration, coastal development, and so we are arguing that if we don't protect them and put in place a management plan, they could be vulnerable to this extractive development.
Thanks, Stanley. And where can people learn more about your work?
We have a website that's supported by Griffith University. It's infinitybluepng.org. Not updated, but soon to be updated. Thank you.
Sounds great. Could you put that link in the chat, please? And then people can access that. That would be fantastic. Oh, you're on your phone, so we'll work something out for you. No worries.
Thank you, Steve.
I might get John to help with that, please. John. Thanks very much. Asha, could you please introduce Scylla for us? Are you frozen, Asha? It seems,
No?
yes, we've got you now. Is Asha just disappeared?
I'm back now. Internet is very
Yes.
unstable. I'm good?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. Thanks so much, Stanley. And that, you know, to me, mangrove seems like almost that mangroves can do for us. And then you also mentioned how, you know, one of the challenges is finance and moving it forward and everything. So this is a really good segue to Celia Choquet, who's an integral member of Catalyst now, and with a lot of initiatives in the leads in climate health and private sector partnerships health. And Celia is also the founder of Match for Impact, which is a social innovation platform, the intersection of climate, health, and systems change, and which is for designing partnerships and financing mechanisms that translate ambition into resilient outcomes on the ground, exactly what we need and what we've been talking about. In the Oceania context, Celia is particularly committed to surfacing locally led solutions via collaborative solutions labs, strengthening climate health linkages, and mobilizing catalytic capital to scale what works, so that stories of impact become durable pathways to climate resilience. Welcome, Celia. Funding is a major part of impact pathways, and we look forward to hearing from you. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Asha. Yes, Celia, great to have you here. The funding, partnerships, capital is such an important element of projects' success and having impact. And in learning about what you do, briefly, really keen to explore that from your experience and expertise as an entrepreneur, in senior executive, and being passionate about having an impact and how that's all weaved together. Super interesting to explore that. So could you sort of define for us what are private partnerships and why do you focus on them?
Yeah, so thank you. And I'm not sure I haven't figured it all out, you know, how it weaves together. But so, yeah, I come out of a career of corporate in health. And then I went out into the more startup world of health, and I also was a social entrepreneur, co-creating solutions with patients. And so for me, I realized actually about a year and a half ago that yeah, the world was going a certain way, and that I needed to step into and do whatever I can to give a little piece of the puzzle. And I feel that what's always been driving me is the passion that business is a force for good. It's not supposed to be this profit extracting monster that we're making of it. And I came across Catalyst and I was like, there it is. Social innovators are actually the answer to that, right? The social entrepreneurship came out of the realization that the business models we have today with the corporations won't be able to solve the problems of tomorrow. So we need different business models. We need a way to create value for all of the ecosystem, right? Including nature. We need to put nature on the balance sheet. And I think that's something that Stanley was working on with all these, finance, accounting, etc. So that's my passion. And I believe that corporates have a big role to play in that. I think we always look at them as sometimes the villains, or sometimes they're far removed from this, but it's not true. And their businesses are very much linked to this change as well. So you can pretend this isn't going to affect me as a corporation and I'll just continue down that road. But it's not true. And especially in health. So where I created my career, I think that linkage to the ecosystem is the most clear. So as a healthcare company, you depend on public, the government's paying for your care, for your medication, for what you're providing, right? That money is usually and luckily not not paid by the patient. So yeah, I think there's an awakening. There's an awakening also on the personal side. There's a big movement of people like me, senior executives of a certain age, that have done their career in corporate and say, no, what I'm going to do with the next 20 years of my career? Do I want to continue down that path that makes no sense, right? So we always, I think of corporations as this one thing. It isn't. It's people, it's resources, it's capital. Decisions are made in very mysterious ways, but we need to make them permeable to that change, right? There needs to be ins and outs, and there needs to be much more awareness amongst leadership as well around the importance of impact on their bottom line, literally. I mean, this is not just talking to do some nice corporate social responsibility anymore, right? Especially again in health. What we're seeing, the changes that climate is imposing on our healthcare systems is huge cost to the healthcare system. And a lot of healthcare systems will not be able to absorb it. So if we could magic wand stop climate change today, we still have a huge burden on our human health, right? So I loved Ali's point about the damper. We need a huge damper in our healthcare system because these heat waves will keep on coming. These floods will keep on happening. The viral disease outbreaks will continue. And we're not isolated. We can say, oh, this is happening over there and it's never going to come, to the other part of the world, right? So for me, private, public, and philanthropy partnership, I would add another P to it, is about that ecosystem. Business is also an ecosystem, and we need to start treating it as such. We can't continue. So I work a lot with startups and a lot with startup accelerators, and it's usually about the solution. You need to have that solution, and then you get the funding. And that's ridiculous. It's not gonna how we're going to solve the problems. We need to start collaborating, right? We need to say, okay, that solution combined with what Stanley is doing on the ground or what Ali is doing on the ground will be able to work, because actually that competition that you're putting on capital creates silos that do not serve the solution in the end, okay? yes, you might get funding over somebody else, but in the end, you are confronted with changing the system all by yourself, right? As the little startup that you are. And I've done it in healthcare when you have a solution to treat cancer in a completely new way, but well, guess what? The healthcare system won't reimburse you, you're toast. You can't get it to market. And the costs of the capital you need to raise to be able to influence government and lobby it are huge. And I think we as Catalyst now, we have that ecosystem, we have the innovators, we have the solutions. I also believe that all the solutions are there. You just need to be plugged in the right way. So for me, private public partnerships are around those efficiency across the value chain. I think we need to stop looking at just who gives money, right? It needs to be where in that value chain do we have synergies? Where can we give up something? Where can we give something? Maybe it's on the cost reduction side. Maybe it's talent. Maybe corporations can step in and give their innovation and a couple of free hours of their senior staff. I know a lot of tech providers, for example, do that, right? So it's not all capital. It is also capital, definitely. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. But I think we need to be much more broader in our thinking there. Sorry, I hope that answered the one part of your question.
That's great. Very passionate about it, which is great. Yes, along with capital and funding, you're talking experience. Another aspect I found interesting was that when you were partnering senior executives with startups, impact groups, you were also emphasizing that for the senior executive, like in a pro bono, well-framed interaction and collaboration, your aim is actually to teach and the senior executive, give their new skills, probably excite them with what's happening at grassroots as well. So I found that really fascinating.
Absolutely, and it's something. So I had the tremendous opportunity to go to Impact Week in Singapore. And there was such a awakening, maybe more than what we see in Europe, around that need to shift leadership from a thinking of me to a thinking of we, yeah? To be able to do these choices that businesses need to make, okay? But I was thinking, okay, some leaders will awaken and do that by themselves, but most need to have a pathway. And how am I expecting senior executives in corporations that done decades of work one way to now know about how to be open to business models that are circular or that are going to take nature into account or that are collaborating more on the ground? How will you make that happen without any training and upskilling and development? You won't, right? So the program that I created is to give senior executives that are in that transition moment, either because they chose, because they say, hey, this isn't for me anymore. I want to give back in a different way. Or I want to work in a way that's meaningful. Or, there's now with AI, I think we're seeing the biggest wave of layoffs of senior executives I've ever seen. It'll swing back, but at the moment they're like, okay, now what? What do I want to do with the rest of my career, right? And there needs to be a leadership development path, right? And so the learning on their side is actually as valuable, even sometimes more, than what they give to social ventures. Because this is where they get that experience that they can come back into their corporate jobs and say, look, this is what works on the ground, right? So I always compared when I started my career a long time ago in pharma, I had to, what they call carry the back. I had to go and convince doctors to prescribe the hepatitis C medication that we were selling. And it taught me so much about the ecosystem of the hospital, right? Taught me who was making which decision, what the pharmacist was doing, what the social worker was doing, etc., right? And then you take that back into headquarters and you say, yeah, you can, do your business this way. It will not work on the ground, and here's why. And that's what we need, right?
could you share with us your favorite example of partnerships that you've been involved with that have had that leadership linked with the impact? Your favorite example?
I mean, there's established examples like Gavi Alliance, for example, that have done amazing things to bring vaccines to the world and combine that with manufacturers of vaccines and governments and things like that in healthcare. I think healthcare is full of these public-private partnerships just because that's the nature of the business in healthcare. Then obviously my favorite is what's now being built with Catalyst Now. So we kicked off an impact coalition at Singapore, Impact Week, bring together 16 organizations around the flourishing of human life, big focus on Southeast Asia. And so actually I was an impact architect, a reference to your climate architect, at that week. And what we were presenting was, can we create a systems change accelerator, right? Can we finance ecosystems instead of separate solutions? But most of all, can we co-create everything from the start? So from the funding scopes with people on the ground, and Asha, you participated in one of those co-creation pilots that we did around the funding scope, to now bring these solutions to the communities to say, this is what we need. This is what, so actually before you even bring the solution, say, we've tried this, it's not working here. Traditional knowledge tells us this and this will, work. Now find us the solution, because again, I think we have those solutions. So for me, what's coming is the Impact Coalition. Also, I'm working on a partnership with Health Innovation Exchange on climate resilient cities and how do we bring healthcare up to speed. So these are the initiatives I'm extremely passionate about. Yeah.
Great, fantastic. And where can people learn more about your work?
So I will put in a couple of links, and we have the two first funding scopes that we created around. One is around actually the seaweed value chain, which Stanley you'll love, and seaweed is very similar to mangroves in all of the different virtues it has to heal, have nature heal itself, basically. And then there's one around climate health resilience. I'll also share my LinkedIn and my program link. So if you want to reach out and have a chat, I'm happy to.
Great. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, now we have time for some questions. So people can ask their questions in person, I reckon. Just put your hand up if anyone has questions for any of the speakers.
I might make a start. So I'm actually curious. Going back to what Stan, actually Ali was saying, and I liked how you described in the Amazon where you had the blocker. One area was the blocker, and then you focused on that block. Am I coming through properly? Because my internet is unstable. So you focus on the block, and then you did some work there, and that apparently, that changed the cycle, the water cycles, right? So is that what you're talking about when you mentioned the land to sky chain? I'd like to know a little bit more about that land to sky chain, and is that something that can happen in various localities? Like, can it be a river system? Can it be an island? So how does that work a little bit more? I'd like to know.
Okay. So it's basically land, sky, and sea connection. So for instance, you are for instance, you are in Oceania, and right now the Oceania, this region has it's most susceptible to the ENSO changes. So you have more of the variability in the El Nino and La Nina phases, and they are beginning to have much more bigger spikes. But if you look at this thing, where it's starting from, I would look at, okay, this is being caused by the trade winds. Trade winds are bringing this thing. But what's bringing the trade winds? And that's the Eastern Pacific and the Western Pacific temperature difference. And what's happening to, where is that coming from? And then when I look at, it's basically AMOC. And why is the AMOC changing right now? Because you have a more freshwater release from the Arctic region. And why is that happening? So one of that is, okay, there's a lot of ice melt. And then the nuance is like completely sort of like averaged out when you look at only the ice melt and it's the carbon story. But if you look at, for instance, the freshwater release from the dams in these regions, you find out, okay, this is why it's an anomaly. The ice melt is an anomaly because there's a lot of fresh water being released in the depth of winter from these Arctic dams. So if you could time those releases in a certain way that the winter release is lessened so that the river can actually freeze and not have that extra fresh water during the time when everything is slow, you can actually help the AMOC in a way which so AMOC basically runs because of two things. There's a salinity and there's a temperature difference. So with a lot of freshwater release, the salinity decreases, and then the overturning stops. And when it stops, the Eastern Pacific becomes, the heat is not being dissipated, it becomes hotter. When it becomes hot, the El Nino sort of like increases in the intensity and it hits Oceania. So this link actually starts like 16,000 kilometers away in the Arctic region. But then you have mangroves. So sometimes you won't be able to change that immediately, the impact which is outside your region. But what you can do is inside the region. Well, yeah, mangroves store the most carbon, but mangroves also have the communities of seagrass and also the diatoms, which actually provide the aerosols for the best aerosols for bringing the rain. So they can dampen the ANSO effect by having multiple rainfall events rather than that one spike which completely destroys everything. So you can that's how you start seeing things. And regarding that book, so this is how we found out. We found out by looking at the historical data. We are working there right now. In the historical data, we found out that these regions had rainfall at this threshold, but during the last 20 years, one of the region is decreasing a lot in terms of the rainfall it's getting, and it comes in the pathway of the coastal moisture. And because it's going down, the Amazon is also going down in rainfall. So if you tweak this up, you bring the coastal moisture inside more and more, and then Amazon starts getting more rainfall, and then the trees recycle, and it's a positive feedback then again, and rain goes further away in multiple frequent cycles rather than one big rain event. So that's kind of like, I hope I explained it.
You did. Lots of complexity in living systems, and then you add the human systems over the top, and that's
and yes, humans are the key species. The keystone species are the humans, and there's no climate without catering for the humans. We can't enclose all of these systems and think that humans, if they're out, the system will balance.
I have a question for Stanley. I'm interested in what you see as the biggest challenges for Oceania, environmentally and socially, in your view. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be related to your project, but just more generally. And you're muted at the moment. I'm still muted there, Stanley.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah, 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 that's an interesting one. And I think for me, environment, there's all this competing development for all our small island development states and developing countries rushing for, the Western, model of development, and there's all this challenge. Environmental protection is not really a priority of governments. Social, we have, the unequal distribution of resources in many of our small island states, governance issues. I think we have some very underlying structural matters to sort out, and also the growing population that's putting a lot of stress on the use of resources. And I think those are key things that our leaders and policymakers really need to look at. But we can start at community level, and I think I was happy to be at the Pacific Islands Oceans Conference, and a lot of the Pacific people say, they've been managing their villages for thousands of years. If they just take a look back and, adopt some of the traditional knowledge and practices, that can be blended with the, modern ways. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you. Celia, you have a question?
No, I wanted to comment on what Stanley was saying and related to healthcare, where we know that there's a huge injustice in climate change, right? So that the people that caused the least of it will get the brunt of the consequences, and on top of it, they're already the most vulnerable. So healthcare is not good in a lot of places. It's already broken. Yeah. And now we're putting another burden on the most vulnerable population, which tends to be actually women. They usually carry 4 times the load of those changes because they will work in conditions that are outside and more exposed to these extreme weather and heat. They are caregivers of the other 2 most vulnerable populations, the elderly and people under 5 and people with existing conditions, right? They usually have less financial independence to absorb these shocks to the system. These are big shocks. This is not coming, well, some of it is coming gradually, but usually there's a huge shock, right? They're also our most important assets. They are the community health workers, and also they will be the ones caring for the communities in times of distress, right? So we have a big problem of caring for that pillar of communities.
Thank you. Any other questions people have?
Hi, my name is Joe, and this is my first Catalyst Now meeting. And I'm just keen to hear a bit more about the systems change accelerator concept that Celia mentioned. Yeah, I'd love to hear a bit more about it.
Hey, Joe, welcome. We're so excited to have you on board.
Thank you.
So what we realized is that we need to break down silos, and we need to break down silos from the start. So that's one key insight into that accelerator thinking. The other one is that co-creation needs to be at the heart of it. We need to create these solutions with communities, and they need to lead this. Okay, so community first. So we took 2 approaches. One is the human-centered design approach around co-creation. And a typical startup accelerator program faced in 3 phases. So there's an initial phase, which is around listening to the communities, see what has not been working, what has been working, and financing that. So financing the glue has been one of the most important yet difficult things to crystallize, right? So we always start with, let's go with a solution, but you first need to see what's the system, yeah? And who needs to work together to make this happen. And investing that fairly small amount in time up front will accelerate the systems change down the line. This is also the point you want to bring in strategic contracting with the system. So governments that say, hey, if you can bring us these outcomes, we will finance and integrate it into our system, right? That's the ideal scenario. Then there comes the scale-up phase, again, traditional accelerator speaking, where you can bring in capital from different sources. So first, capital tends to be philanthropic or grants, or right. But then in that second phase, when you have a concrete solution, you can do many more things. You can be much more blended in your financing. You can do pre-purchase agreements with corporates. You can bring in maybe some of those impact investors for those solutions, and still philanthropy for the groundwork that needs to be happening on the community level. And then finally, the third phase is really to aim for integration into the system or change of the system, right? And that needs to be built in and co-created from the start. You see, if you try to do that at the end, then you're up against the wall. But if from the beginning you say, let's do a proof of concept here and see if we can get to those outcomes, you have a much easier way to influence the system down the road. So that's what we're doing in the Collaborative Solution Labs. We are starting with this, right? And this is everybody's talking about it. No one has really done it. So we're raising funding for those first proof of concepts. But the echo has been amazing, for both from the funders and from the people on the ground. So we know this is needed. It's just never been done.
That's a really amazing concept, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you, and thank you for the question.
We have a question in the chat. What's your favorite way of outreaching? I'm not 100% who that was directed at, but Celia, do you want to respond to that one? What's your favorite way of outreaching?
Yeah, depends to who and on what, but listen, I mean, we're in bizarre times where everything is becoming very automated and unhuman, and so actually getting people's one-to-one FaceTime has become a luxury that I really cherish. So the most you can make those conversations happen, actually also bring people into one room together. It's very, very special, especially when you get them to co-create around something that they're passionate about. Asha, you will remember that from our first co-creations. For the second session, we did a visioning exercise, and just to say, okay, now imagine we're 5 years down the road and we actually solve this. What will the future look like? And people, including me, we're all in tears because like nobody is asking that question anymore, you know? Yet it's that type of energy you need to solve these problems. If you stay stuck in the negative thinking, you can't find the outcome, right? You can't find what it takes. And yes, it's tough. But, you know, I think there's lots of people out there trying to solve things, but they're trying to solve it by themselves. So my favorite way of outreaching, if I can, you know, cherry pick, is getting people into a room together and let's solve this. Like, what does good look like? But obviously that's becoming more and more difficult.
Yeah, well, it's great to connect with like-minded people keen to make an impact through
Absolutely.
places like this. Yeah. Well, I'd like to invite Asha to close and thank our speakers for detailing the fantastic work that they're all up to. Appreciate it very much, and thanks for contributing to this Catalyst Climate Change Week. Fantastic. So Asha, if you could close us out, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you so much, Steve, and thank you to everyone in the room, but especially the speakers, and you know what you shared with us. It, like, you know, so we're talking about getting people in the room. Well, we're in the room, so you know, and let's go. You know, let's do something, and that's why we're calling this Pacific Pathways, right? So we're calling it pathways from the Pacific region, from here outward. You know, so let us get together and you know, like people with expertise, like, you know, all of you, Ali, Stanley, Celia, all your expertise together, and motivate us. And I know Joe asked a really good question, and I know Joe well, and he's got some brilliant ideas as well. So lovely to have him almost going to be onboarded, not yet, but he's here anyway. So thank you
very
so
soon.
much, Joe. And yeah, Stanley, you too one day, very soon. So we'll get you in as well. So yeah, so all of us together, working together and creating that pathway. The way you described it, Celia, was really good about, and also that vision of it working, so we're not stuck in a place from the tragedy of it, or the poor us, whatever, people are suffering, whatever, from the point of everyone thriving, and then reaching that moment. And that's what each of you have told a story where something like that has happened, or you've put ourselves on the journey to that outcome. And so these pathways we collect, as our stories that we can actually replicate. And so let us be the first ones to move it out there. And so I don't know, I think most of you here are already Catalyst members, but if you're not, please join Catalyst and please be part of our pathway to create climate resilience. And of course, that affects health of everybody. And so, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for the time that you've given us. And for everyone in the room, like just being here has made it, your energy, what you brought has helped this whole room as well. So every single one of us makes a difference. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Catch you
Thank
later.
you. Have a lovely evening. Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.